So today is Saturday and the rain has finally stopped. It kind of rained all week long and things have kind of dried up a little bit. It's a little bit cool today, but that's okay. So since it's nice outside, I decided I was going to do another outdoor project. So today I'm going to make some toad houses out of Hypertufa, which is a cement-based mix. You add a whole bunch of other stuff to it. So this is my first time making it, so y'all can join me on my trip into possible failure, and we'll see how it goes. But anyway, figured I'd give it a shot and record my first time out. So, which a lot of my videos are that way, so you will see if I fail or succeed. So, anyway, I'm going to show you what we need, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so these are the basic ingredients for the recipe for Hypertufa that I'm using. There's several recipes that you can use depending on what you want to make, and the recipes are available online. But the one I'm using is 1 part of Portland cement. So this is Portland cement, not concrete. You can see it's a very fine powder. It doesn't have any of the aggregate in it. Okay? So it's 1 part of the cement, 1 part of perlite, which is just like that white foamy stuff that you see in potting mix. You could also use vermiculite, but I couldn't find any. Apparently that gives it kind of a glossy, or it'll sparkle in whatever you're doing. I've also got some peat moss. Now I've recently found out that peat moss is not very environmentally friendly, since they destroy peat bogs to harvest this stuff. So you could also use coir. I think that's how it's spelled or sounds. It's spelled C-O-I-R, but it's like the shell of coconuts all ground up, and it works very similar to peat moss, so you could use that as well. And the other part is 1 part of sand. So I just bought all-purpose sand. You can use a finer sand or a coarser sand depending on how you want your product to look, but since I've never done this before, I just used what I could find. So it's 1 part each of all of those things, and then you add water. So the amount of water that you'll use depends on a bunch of different factors, including, you know, the moisture in the air and stuff like that. So you just add it until it feels right, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. So some of the other things we're going to need, I've got a measuring or just a scoop that I'm going to use to measure. I may end up using the cup, so it doesn't really matter how much what size measuring thing you use. It's just 1 part or equal parts of it. So then I've got my trowel for mixing. I've got my gloves right here, because the Portland cement's kind of caustic, so you don't want to be getting your hands on it. I've also got my letters that I can press into the Hypertufa, because I'm going to spell toad abode on there. I've got a bowl, because I'm going to use this as the form. I don't know if I'm going to make the a sand form and put the Hypertufa over it. I may just use the bowl. I don't know. We'll see. And I also had a bottle of cement colorant. This is a terracotta color. I bought this a long time ago because I thought I was going to use it for my stepping stones, and then I found out that it uses a lot to color it, so I decided not to use it. And I still haven't done the stepping stones, but that's another project coming up. And then I've got my mixing trough and a whole bunch of plastic bags so that I can cover over my toad houses at the end and keep them moist while they cure. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and get started mixing up my Hypertufa. Okay, so I have sifted some of the sand because it had pretty big little bits of gravel in there, so I just used a regular kitchen strainer that I've procured for outdoor use and just strained it. So over here in my mixing trough I've got my cement, peat, perlite, and sand. And you want to mix this dry until it's really combined really well before you add the water. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the last of my sand and do the dry mix, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so here's my dry mixed recipe, and I just put my gloves on and mixed it by hand because it was easier than using the spoon or scoop or whatever the thing is I had. Plus, when you're going through there, if you find any pieces of twig from the moss, you can toss those out. Anyway, what I was saying was I had basically a triple batch here, and so that means that I'll use maybe 3 to 4.5 of these scoops of water. So it just depends on some different things like environmental factors and stuff, so you kind of just have to test it as you go along. Another one of the things I read online was after you mix it and add in the water, that you should let it sit for about 10 minutes. That way, like, the peat will soak up water and stuff like that, so that you'll know what the consistency is really like. What you want to be able to do, what it said, is when you take a ball of this mix, when you squeeze it, a little bit of water may squeeze out, but when you open it up, it should maintain that ball shape, because what you're doing is you're actually sculpting with this stuff, and you want it to be able to hold its shape, but you don't want so much water that it starts slumping when you put it on the mold, and you don't want so little water that it's real flaky and dry. So anyway, it just depends. And so my coloring mix said to mix this with the water before you put it into the cement, so I'll probably put a little bit in the cup and mix it in with the water and then pour it in there. So I'm not looking for a huge color payoff, I'm just trying to use up this bottle of color. And since it's going into a gray cement rather than a white cement, the color is going to be muddied. You can get white cement, it's a little bit more expensive and it doesn't come in as big a bag. So anyway, that's why I got the gray cement. So we'll go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so here is the mixed up Hypertufa, and so it's just pre-mixed right now. So if I take the wad of mix, it holds its shape, so that's how you know you don't have too much water yet. So anyway, I'm going to let this sit for 10 minutes while I get my molds ready for my toad house, and then I'll be back. Okay, so here are my molds. I went for an igloo type shape, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take some plastic shopping bag that I ripped into sheets, and lay that on top of the mold, and then put the Hypertufa on top of that, and so that'll just keep the sand from sucking the moisture out of the Hypertufa before it sets, and keep the sand from sticking to the inside of the mold, or the inside of the toad house as well. So over here is my mixed up tufa, and it is set for 10 to 15 minutes, and you can see it's still holding a shape. It's not too flaky, so I think it's good to start working with. So the other thing about the plastic is if it doesn't work right, I can just lift the plastic off and pull the whole thing up and add some more water if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start putting the Hypertufa on the mold, and I'll be right back. Alright, so what I did was I just grabbed some old cedar pickets that I had, or some tops of the old cedar pickets, and just covered it over with a plastic trash bag so that I can recover the sand, and so I had a flat surface to work on. So now I'm just going to put the plastic over the mold, smooth it down a little, and just grab a wad of Hypertufa. And start shaping it over the mold. And so that it'll hold its shape and it'll be structurally sound, I guess, for a frog house. You want to make sure it's an inch or so thick. Alright, so here are the finished toad houses. They've kind of started to set up a little bit. They're still wet, but they're not dripping anymore. So I'm going to cover them up with plastic and let them cure for about a week or so. Apparently the longer you leave the concrete moist, the stronger it is, or the cement. Anyway, so with the leftover, I made a little toad pool. I don't know how well it'll hold water, but anyway, just another piece to put with the toad houses, and used up the rest of my Hypertufa mix. So anyway, I'm going to cover all these up, and I'll be back later after it's cured to unveil and see if they worked out, and I'll take them off of the sand mold, and we'll see what happens. They may just fall apart. I don't know. But we'll find out together. Alright, here are my toad houses. I'm going to go ahead and take them off the mold. It's been a week, so they've been under plastic all week, so I think they should be ready to take off. We'll see what happens. And over here is the little toad pool thing that I made with the extra leftover Hypertufa. So anyway, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try to take it off of the mold without breaking it. We'll see what happens. Pretty lightweight actually for all the cement that was in there. So there's the inside. If you can see all that, there's the inside and the top. So I'm just going to leave it there. So these little thin pieces right here, I'm just going to break off. Alright, so I'm just going to leave it to sit there. So they're really lightweight. I knew that I had read that things that you made with Hypertufa were lightweight, but I was actually kind of shocked at how lightweight they were. But anyway, so I'm going to let these sit out for a little while, just so like the rain and stuff will wash away the lime or whatever's the caustic thing in cement, so that it doesn't hurt the little toads that may take up shelter in them. So anyway, that's it. So I'll have to come up with another project now.